household where I was taught not to keep my word, and I was taught to lie for my mother if she didn't want to do something. My job was to tell the people that she was sick, and my dad and I both used my mother's illness. If we didn't want to do something, he'd say, well, the old lady's sick, or he would tell me to tell him, or, so we use that as an excuse not to keep our word. And, I'd commit to something, and then I'd wake up the morning that I was supposed to go do whatever I committed to, and I'd feel fat. I mean, it's like I had gained 50 pounds overnight, and I felt too fat to go. And I wouldn't show up. I would not show up. I would call at the last minute, and, I didn't say, well, I woke up too fat. I would just say I woke up sick, and which literally I was, but it was fat sickness, So the main thing I think, is for us to keep our word, not only to show up for others, but to show up for ourselves. And it takes courage to do that. I'll give you an example of when I learned to start keeping my word and showing up. I'd like to say it was, when I was a young person, but it wasn't. Well, I was pretty young. I had just opened Shades of Hope, and that was in 88. And eating disorder facilities were far and few between. There wasn't a lot of talk about eating disorders at that time. And, we just kind of put ourselves out there as an all addiction treatment center. And I had gotten invited to go out to Long Beach, California, to speak at this big conference. Well, at the time that I got the invite, I thought I was all of that and something else. I just thought that was wonderful that I got the invite and was excited until time to go. The day that I was supposed to leave, I froze. I absolutely froze. And I think, and this is where the noises in our heads, maybe you don't have them, but I have them. I got to thinking, who are you? Who do you think you are going out there speaking to those educated people? I did a number on myself. And our executive director got wind that I wasn't going. And I was over at the annex no, I didn't have annex then. But anyway, I was somewhere doing something, making up excuses not to go is what I was doing. And she found me, and she said, I heard that you are thinking about not going to Long Beach. And I said, I just can't do that. To get out there with those PhDs and those, this and that, I said, I can't do it. I can't do it. And she said, yes, you can, and you're going to. If you get your bag packed. She was very ugly to me. She said, they will never, I don't care what excuse you come up with, they will never remember that. What they will remember is that you did not show up and that you didn't keep your word. And they won't remember why you didn't. They'll just remember that you didn't. So she said, I'll even go with you. And I finally thought, okay, I don't need her to go, but I got the message that I needed to go. And I didn't want to because I was still very, very shy at that time. But I went, and I am so glad I did. I met people that I'm still friends with today. Lifelong friends, and I learned so much from the other people that I didn't know. And so that's the time that I didn't want to show up, and I did it anyway. And then it wasn't long after that I was probably the next, spring or something, I was invited to speak at a conference up at Cape Cod. Well, one more time I froze. I thought, but I was behind the stage ready to walk on. I was waiting around. I had some time. But I thought, who are you? Who do you think you are? Being here and acting like you know something. And I thought, I can't go out there. I mean, it was a large conference, and I was to be talking about eating disorders, to doctors and master's level, PhDs, all of that. So I had noticed and remembered that there was a phone out in the hall, payphone. And so I went out there, and at that time you could dial an operator without the money, So I dialed, and I called my sponsor Collect because I was saying there without any money, so I called her Collect. And of course she answered, and I told her my dilemma. I'm supposed to speak, and I can't go on the stage. Well, she cussed like an absolute sailor. And she said, called me some names that wasn't very nice. And she said, you get your black self out there. You get your blah, 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 blah. I mean, she was ugly to me. But the message was, you've got to go show up. Those people are out there waiting on you. And so I did. And there again, it was a wonderful experience. But I don't know about any of y'all, but I get up in my head, and my head tells me a lot of things that I should be doing, ought to do, whatever, or who I am, So it takes courage to show up. It takes courage to show up for ourselves and to show up for others, and just being physically present. We had a dear friend, and I was going to tell you about this executive director that made me go to Long Beach. She said, if you don't go out there and show up at that professional conference where the eating disorder field was just beginning, she said, you mark off any integrity that you might ever have, because they will not remember why you didn't show up, but they'll never forget that you didn't. And you have an opportunity to go out there. And what she said was, yes, those professionals, they will come in and they will give the research, and that's really good. And they will talk, from a doctor's point of view. And, they're going to get that side of it. And then what you're going to come up and do is talk about a personal experience. You're going to talk about your own experience with weight from the time that you were, a little bitty girl. So she said, you can mark integrity off of your list if you don't go. So I went, and like I said, I'm very glad that I did. So it takes courage to do that. It takes courage to to not hear the voices in our heads about how we're not worth it, how we don't know anything, blah, blah, blah. And so showing up is being physically present somewhere. And not only that, it's about showing up emotionally. You can show up somewhere and not really be there. You can, get up in your head and, go to Mars or somewhere. But also show up honest. Be honest when you show up, and have spiritual awareness. Look for the spiritual part. When you look for God, you're going to see Him everywhere. You're going to see Him. You're going to see Him in other people. You're going to see Him in situations. So when you do show up, be aware of what you're seeing, who you're seeing. Speak to people. We had a dear friend, in fact, last week, we were to be gone all week to to Knoxville, Tennessee. We have a beloved little friend that has worked herself. I mean, she's worked and worked and worked. She's going to be a PA, and she was receiving her white coat last Friday, which is, a big deal for for PAs and for MDs and all. And so we were going to travel. A friend of hers came in from San Diego to California to go with us. I mean, we love and adore her, and we wanted to show up for her and to her what she'd had a very bad year. Her mom had cancer for 10 years. 10 years she's had cancer. And then last year, her father got cancer, and he was very, very bad. Long story short, we didn't go to Knoxville. We went to Pampa, Texas, to her father's funeral. He died. And thank God her uncle flew her family up to Knoxville, and she did go. I get to do the white coat ceremony. But it would have been very easy for us to say, oh, it's so far to Pampa, it's this, it's that. But we showed up, and I'm so glad we did for whatever reason. And she's well known in this town. She's grew up in Pampa, but she's lived here for years, served in many capacities in a lot of different areas here. But we were the only ones from Abilene. So it's a long trip. And I can understand why others didn't show up, but I'm so glad that we did. And it meant the world to her that we would show up for her. And so we didn't get to go to her white coat ceremony, but we will go in December 26 to her graduation, unless it coincides with Kim, my daughter's getting her master's in December. But hopefully it'll be on different weekends. But anyway, so not only do we need to show up, but be willing to show up and be seen, even when you're a mess, even when you're a mess and you don't want to, I'm always, and when I say a mess physically and a mess emotionally, I'm pretty, I have a lot of, could be some false pride, but I have a lot of pride. And there's very few people that have seen me not fixed up or dressed up or anything. But regardless of, if you're running late and you can't, doll up, go anyway. Just show up, even in the mess. And if you are, maybe something's happened to you and you feel sad or you feel emotional or whatever, show up anyway. Show up in your mess, and that will help you get past yourself. And what that will do is you'll take responsibility for your own healing and for your own growth. We grow through things, doing things that we don't want to do. We grow through that, doing things that we don't want to do. And then I can always tell when we were doing inpatient clients, it would take people a long time sometimes to show up, to actually, the body would be there and it would take them a long time or some time for the mind to follow. And I could tell when they were when they were showing up, because they would usually come out of that fog of, they're being in treatment for the first time. And they would, present in different ways. Some of them would be very withdrawn, very shy. Some of them were wanting to, screaming at the top of their lungs, wanting to go home. Some of them would be angry, they'd get angry at any and everything. But I could tell when they were getting ready to recover, because they would start showing up in groups. They would start showing up in groups. They would start not only asking questions, but they would start adding to the group. And that's when the healing starts, is when they would start showing up in groups. Now, they may get out of the group and, act like a rear end, but that's all right. But they, it's little by slow, they would get out of themselves and show up for their peers show up for the staff, show up mainly for themselves. So what keeps us from showing up? What keeps us from doing the things that we want to do? One of the things is fear. I think fear is, and fear is false evidence appearing real. We make up all the stuff. We make up all of the stuff in our head. And that fear is usually of judgment. We judge our own selves that we're not qualified to do what we're doing. Or we make up we'll fail, that failure syndrome, or that we will be rejected. And so what we do, we reject them before they have an opportunity to reject us, and then we stay hid out in our houses. And so another thing, and I could talk about this all day, is perfectionism. If we can't do it perfect, we have to wait until we're ready. I remember that first time that I went and spoke at a big conference. I had every note you could imagine. I went prepared. I did not use one of those notes. It did me good to write them out and all of that. But what I've learned is when you speak from the heart, what comes from the heart reaches the heart. What comes from the head goes right over the head. So remember that. Perfectionism is waiting until we feel ready. If we wait till we feel ready, we'll probably never do anything. And then it's about the big C. It's about control. We can control whether we show up or not, and we can control and manage how we want to control how we are perceived. And, we're afraid that we will not be perceived or received in the way that, we think we ought to be. So we try to control every situation. And then we'll find ways to disconnection. And how we do that is by numbing ourselves with some form of addiction. If you're alcoholic, you can numb yourself with alcohol. If you go down the list. Now, those with eating disorders, if you're asked to do something, I'll give you an example. We had a house full of children, and I was a stay-at-home mom. We didn't go on many trips, and if we did, they were planned out to the minute. We pretty much had to do that. So one day my husband called, and he was taking a load of equipment up to Oklahoma to the little town where I had a very dear aunt that lived there, Aunt Lily. And he said, do you and the kids want to ride up there with me? We'll just ride up there, spend one night in a hotel, and then come back. And I said, oh, of course. Now keep in mind, I was at my very biggest. And so I hung up the phone, and I was thinking about, what to pack for overnight. It's like moving when you have a bunch of kids. And I was running around like a chicken with its head cut off, trying to figure out what to do. And my mind was going 900 miles an hour. And if you don't have a food problem, you will not understand this. But I could not calm myself down long enough to pack. So what I did, I went and opened the refrigerator. Now, there was a bowl of leftover spaghetti in there. At that time, I didn't even like spaghetti. But leftover spaghetti, folks. And I put my hand in there, and I got me a gob of that leftover spaghetti and crammed it in my mouth. Well, I know now that carbs are soothing. I didn't know then. I just knew I had to get something in my mouth and in my stomach. And it's like an alcoholic taking a drink. And I got that sense of ease and comfort. And then I went and packed. So that disconnect But also the disconnection is the isolating away from people. And I would do that for fear of not knowing what to say. And everything I'm talking about is self-centeredness. When we're all wrapped up in ourselves and what we're thinking and what we're thinking that they're thinking about us and all of that, when we're all wrapped up in ourselves, we make a very poor package. It's not a pretty package. And so a lot of times people will spend their lifetime hiding out. And had I not found Al-Anon, if I hadn't found Al-Anon, and I want to tell you, if you're shy, if you can, identify with this, I was so shy, I couldn't say my name. I was so shut down. So when I first started going to Al-Anon in October this month of 1968, I had heard about Al-Anon through Father Martin. I don't know if any of you remember Father Martin. He did the Chalk Talks, and he was a pioneer in the alcoholism field, and he had a little treatment center, or was director of a treatment center on the East Coast for drugs and alcohol. And that's one thing that I like about myself, is that I will finally show up. And I was looking for information at that time. My mother was a bad old alcoholic. I was married to an alcoholic. And I had seen in our paper in Abilene, Texas, that Father Martin was going to be speaking in Midland, which is out close to where my folks lived in Odessa. And I thought, well, I could kill two birds with one stone. I could go in here, Father Martin, and go check on my mom. And the only thing I knew about Father Martin was I had, I don't know if y'all ever have heard of a little magazine called Guidepost. It's a little meditation book. It had little stories in it. I mean, I'm telling on myself, I'm aging myself. It was very old, little book, but Meg knows, she's shaking her head, yes. And so I would get that little magazine once a month. And I was praying for some answers about, what I was praying for was sobriety for my husband and sobriety for my mother. I didn't know to ask for help for myself because I didn't know that I was sick, and I was far sicker than they ever thought about me. So that little magazine came in, and I would read it cover to cover because it had some really good articles in it. And there was an article in there about Father Martin. And then, so I read about and how he was a pioneer in the alcoholism field. Now, he was from back east. This is really a God deal. He was from back east. How would a Texas woman ever meet someone like Father Martin? So I read the article, read who he was, I read about his own alcoholism, read how he had come out of the disease of alcoholism and how he was helping others at a treatment center. His name's Father Martin. And so fast forward, probably a year later, it came out a little ad in our paper at Abilene about that Father Martin was going to be presenting a workshop in Midland, Texas. The same Father Martin that I had seen in that little magazine. So of course I was going. Now I was so shy I could not utter a sound. And I so wanted to go up and meet him. But I'll tell you what, that man described the disease of alcoholism better than probably anyone I've ever heard describe it. But he also described the family. He also described the wife. And I had never heard anyone talk about how the family was affected by alcoholism and how the wives were affected, or the husbands. And he talks about Al-Anon. That's how I found out about Al-Anon. So because I had taken my mother to AA meetings when I was, I think by the time I was about 11, 12 years old. I would drive us to those meetings, but they wouldn't let me go in. And so I didn't hear about Al-Anon until then. So, and it wasn't that many years later. It really wasn't, because I was just 19 when I got married. But anyway, nevertheless, I went, and he talked about Al-Anon, and I went to Al-Anon. I showed up. I would go and I would park on the parking lot, and I would watch people go in. It was at a church, Episcopal church. I'd watch them go in, and I knew it was in the basement. And, one time I got out and walked as far as the front door, and then I couldn't go in. The next time I went past the front door into the foyer, and then I couldn't go down the stairs. Anyway, it took me about a month to get to the room. I won't go through every stage of it, but when I got there, it took me 6 months to say my name. But what I did is I kept showing up, and what I am so excited about is those other women in there kept showing up, and they were there every time that I did show up. I want to tell you a little story about Father Martin. So I saw him. I did not meet him. I mean, I didn't have enough self-esteem to go down and meet him, at Midland when he spoke out there. I want to show you what God can do. I'd been in the field for a long time, and I worked with a woman down at Florida, Barbara Caraway. She had a small outpatient practice, so I had met her at a workshop up at South Dakota. But anyway, I would go down and do workshops for her and work with some of her clients. She would come out here and do trauma work. She's really the one that I learned a lot about how to do trauma work from. She'd come out here and work with our clients. And then we became good friends. She had a brother in the drug alcohol field that was pretty high up and owned like 23 treatment centers across the United States and all that. So a group of the leaders in the alcohol drug field had been contacted by a group of Russians that wanted to learn about the disease of alcoholism. They came over, they spent a year here. That is a long time, but they visited just about every treatment center in the United States, and they were on their last leg of their journey. And codependency was just being talked about. It was brand new, folks. And Barbara and I were on the cutting edge because we'd gone to every workshop that we could on codependency, and that's what we were really focusing on in our workshops. So they contacted Barbara to see if the two of us would be willing to work with these Russians for a week. And we said absolutely that we would. So we went down, and you'll never believe who was in that house party. Her brother owned a big home, huge home there. And so his sponsor came, and he sat in through some of the workshops. You got it, that was Father Martin. And Father Martin was with us in those not all of the workshops, because by that time he was getting elderly, but he loved my story. And he said, "Why didn't you come up and talk to me?" And I said, "Because I was too shy and bashful." So that's what God can do. Who would have ever thought that I would be able to be in a room with Father Martin helping a group of Russians? So anyway, it's all a God deal. So sometimes we just have to show up perfectly imperfect. If you wait until you are perfect to show up, you will never show up. So another thing is, when you do show up for yourselves, but also make a connection to other people. Connect with other people. Like I said, I was always so shy. I finally got to where I would put myself out there. And my kids can tell you stories of, we didn't have PTA at Wiley. We had PTO at Wiley School, but I became very active in PTO. This was what I couldn't hardly utter my name, let alone get up. And I was, Lord, 5-year-old was the treasurer, and I had to get up and give a report, and my voice would tremble. And anyway, but it's those things like that that I kept forcing myself to do. And I've served in every capacity of PTO through the years. But it's, had I stayed at home like I wanted to, and sometimes I would, sometimes I just couldn't go. Sometimes I could not make myself go. And then that's when I'd make up a lie. And the best lie how I got out of doing a lot of things was, well, I got a call from my mother, and my mother was sick. She was sick all the time, so I wasn't really lying. I was just lying that I got a call from her. So that was my excuse to get out of a lot of things. So one of the things, when you do start showing up, show up with clarity. Truth. When you tell the truth, it clears up all confusion. Truth takes care of the confusion. It overrides confusion. And we can just say that we're confused until hell freezes over. Well, I'm just so confused. Inside confusion is the answer to problems. And so it's about getting out there and asking for help, and and being with other people. And when you can find the truth sets us free, and it clears up the confusion. Another thing that it will, when we start showing up for ourselves and for others, we gain confidence. Confidence. It's not so much confidence from success. But it's courage. We get courage that is built into each of us, and I'm not bragging on myself, but I'll tell you what, from where I came from, there's no way in the world I could have done some of the things that I've done if the God in me had not been there. And I found the God of my understanding at age 8, and that experience is as real today to me as it was when I was 8 years old. So showing up for others is showing up and just being present, just being there. When someone is hurting, they don't need you to solve it. When there's a funeral, when there's a loved one that's ill, they don't need you to solve it. They have doctors. They know all they need is your presence. Your presence, just showing up and being there. They need you to be there. They need you to be calm. They need you to be grounded and be human. Yes, you will have maybe some of your own feelings, but when you're showing up for other people, keep both feet planted firmly on the ground because you're there for them. And another thing that how to show up for yourself and for others is listen more than you talk. I have the sweetest little therapist over at Shades for years, and she had a master's degree. How she got that, I don't know, but she would talk, and she would not shut up. I started to get her a t-shirt made. I'm talking and I can't shut up. She could not shut her mouth. And I would try to, very, because I didn't want, that was her first job. She had done an internship, but we were the first rattle out of her box. And so I did not want to, I think Cam knows who I'm talking about. She's laughing, but I'll tell you, that girl, bless her heart, and thank God her husband was transferred out of town. I don't know that I would ever fire anybody for over talking, but she was talking. She could not shut her mouth. So let that be a warning. Just go, when you're going to go and show up for somebody, don't try to be the center of attention and just do all the talking. Now, if they ask questions, of course you can talk, but by and large, go and just be there and learn to listen. Have a listening for people. We can act like we're listening, there's a difference between acting like you're listening and having a listening for someone. When you have a listening for someone, it's like you lean in, and you really want to hear them. I know, and this is something that I didn't dream of. I mean, I think it's a God deal, but I catch myself in working with clients when they start telling their story, and it happened even before I got hard of hearing. But I lean in because I want to hear every word that they're saying, and I find myself leaning in, and I hope I don't scare them thinking I'm going to pounce on them. But anyway, lean into people, pay attention, listen, have a listening for people, and then how you show up for yourself is practice daily presence by practicing daily meditation. Just used to, I would spend an hour or two in meditation. Probably do me good to do it now. I don't do that, but it's, I will have prayer and meditation a lot of times before my feet ever hit the floor. So that's a morning check-in with myself and with the God of my understanding. And, what do I need today? What do I need to do? What I can do for someone else? And then another way to show up is have boundaries and know when you can say no. You can't show up for everyone all of the time. And so to have that discernment when to say no, and that knowing, saying no is a gift that you're giving yourself sometimes. No is a complete sentence. It doesn't mean you can't do something at a later date, but for right now, no, I can't do that. And so practice gratitude if you want to show up for yourself and others. Used to, what I said I wanted to do one day had absolutely zero to do with what I wanted to do the day that thing occurred. I mean, I would make these grandiose commitments. Oh yeah, I can do that. And most of the time I would carry through with them, but I didn't always want to. And sometimes I wouldn't because I'd get too scared. I couldn't do it, So be careful what you commit to. If you're going to commit to do something, that is giving your word, and integrity is keeping it. That clinical director, I can hear her words in my mouth, in my ears right now when I wasn't going out to California to speak. She said, your integrity will be shot to hell in this field if you don't show up. I said, okay. So I got my bag packed and I did show up. Okay, so ask yourself today, this is just something you can ask yourself, who needs you to show up for them today? Who do you need to show up for? Is there someone that needs you to call on them, pick up the phone and call them, or just show up for them? And where have you been hiding in your own life? Are you hiding out in your own life? At my age, I guess I've earned the privilege of, not committing to a whole lot. But if I commit to something, I'm going to do it. But in today's time, I don't commit to as much as I used to, because when it comes time to do it, I don't know that I would either feel like doing it or want to do it. So anyway, I don't commit to anything that I'm not going to show up and do. So the art of showing up is how love gets built, one honest moment at a time. Showing up for ourselves and showing up for each other.